Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Kurt on Cougs. For this one, we're kind of just reviewing what happened last week, as well as giving a little preview of what we got coming up this week. Big week for BYU athletics. All around for basketball, BYU men's basketball ending their season this week, trying to wrap up well and secure a good spot in the conference tournament, while BYU women's basketball starts their postseason. So very excited for all of that. Now a quick review of what happened this last weekend. Well, first of all, BYU women's basketball, quite a heartbreaker. Honestly, played a really solid game. Manages to come back. They were down, I think, double digits early. Things weren't looking good. I think their biggest deficit was like 14 or so, and they went into the half down 10. Ultimately, they come back. They send this game to overtime. This felt like a game where both teams kept on having chances to seal the deal. Neither team could do it until the final seconds of OT. BYU gets a drive to the basket. Ultimately, in my opinion, it was a decent play BYU called up. I feel like they were very much looking to see if they could either get to the hoop with Delaney Gibb, get a foul called, or get a kick out. Ultimately, I feel like Utah read it perfectly. Ultimately, the ball gets ripped out of Delaney Gibb's hands. Utah runs with it down the court and hits a half-court shot for the win. So tough way to lose a game. Very proud of the team for the way they fought in that one. At the end of the day, it is a loss. Fantastic play by Utah, by the way. Like, definitely Utah earned that win. I'm not going to try to sit here and say that half-court shot is just lucky. For one thing, that's an extremely skilled play to be able to make in the first place. And yeah, end of a great game. Definitely was an exciting game to watch. Sadly, of course, Cougars lose that one. And so now they come into this week where they will be playing in the conference tournament. And I honestly don't know what I'm going to do with videos now with the tournament, with tournaments coming up. Because a whole lot happening, lots of times back-to-back days. So it might be a little inconsistent. I'll try to make as many reviews as I can. But yeah, we'll have to see. But they play tomorrow against UCF. Winner of that game plays against number 5 seed Kansas State. So I think that's going to be... I think that the Cougars have a pretty good chance to make it to the second round. And honestly, I could see them pulling off an upset in the second round as well. So, of course, would love to see that. But of course, it all starts against UCF. And for me, honestly, looking at this thing, what I'm thinking are some keys to this game. For one thing, once again, I talked about it before, I forgot her name, but UCF has a really good player that accounts for about 1/3 of their points. So in my opinion, stopping her, very essential. Cougars have already done that earlier this season. It worked out really well. And then, in the meantime, another deciding factor for the game is just going to be being just solid fundamentals on offense. I feel like that's been something I've seen the Cougars struggle with this year. Once again, lots of really talented players, lots of good scorers, passers, rebounders. They got it all. But ultimately, sometimes fundamentals have been a little sloppy. I feel like that's what leads to a lot of turnovers, a lot of fouls. So I feel like ultimately if the Cougars can do those two things, I think they will beat UCF and manage to advance their way forward in this thing. And yeah, so that's ultimately my bold prediction for that game. I'm going to say I think Cougars win by double digits. I know both teams are going to be very motivated. It is the postseason. I'm not sure where these teams are at in regards to postseason tournaments outside of this. I know there's the NIT, there's some new ones, CWI, something like that. And so I'm not sure where all that's going, but personally, I think BYU comes out with a double-digit win over the Golden Knights tomorrow. And yeah, it's exciting postseason basketball. We've already seen some of the tournaments starting this weekend in men's basketball and some of the smaller conferences. And yeah, loving it. My personal pick for who I think is going to win the Big 12 women's basketball tournament is I'm going to go with TCU. TCU's been so good this year. They got that really good pairing of Van Lith and Prince. And so with those two together, I think they probably win it. So that's my pick there. And yeah, excited for that game. If BYU manages to win tomorrow, I will probably make a review video for that game as well as a preview for their next game against Kansas State, either late Wednesday, early Thursday. So I'll have to see. But yeah, hoping for sure that we'll be celebrating a BYU women's basketball win tomorrow. So there's that. And then jumping over to BYU men's basketball, they had a very solid win this last weekend, beating West Virginia at home. This was a game that was honestly pretty sloppy and pretty close up until the half. The Cougars went on a little bit at the run to take a 6-point lead into the break, 25-19. Didn't hit a three the entire half. I feel like that's something that West Virginia did a really good job focusing on. But the way BYU responded, ultimately, I feel like is what gives me the most hope in this team, especially for hopes of a deep run in the tournament. With arguably their biggest weapon taken away in a lot of regards. Now, ultimately, they did bounce back in the second half and hit 5 of 11 3-point shots there. And so they weren't totally shut out from three. But even, when they weren't shooting the three really well, they had a lot of success going down low, especially Fuseni Torore goes for, trying to remember, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Really impressive performance by him, and I think he's a guy that deserves a lot of credit. This is a guy that, knew coming into the year his starting job was basically being taken with Keba Keita transferring in, but he sticks around, grinds it out, and has a great performance for BYU, and just an overall very solid win, winning by 21 against a team that is NCAA tournament quality good. I think that's really good for your resume and everything. And yeah, now coming into this week, you got a couple games that I like, kind of honestly opposite ends of the spectrum. One very hard victory and one very likely victory, I would say. I feel like BYU will have the motivation. They have more talent than Utah. I think they win that game. But tomorrow, I guess I'm going to focus on this game more in this video. They got the big one at Iowa State. You could argue the biggest game of the year, ranked teams playing against each other. This one's going to be a lot of fun at the Hilton. It's going to be interesting to see who is able to suit up tonight for Iowa State. I know they've had some injury trouble. In the meantime, for BYU, Cannon Catchings reportedly will be out for this one. He's day-to-day. I think it's pretty likely BYU will at least have him for the postseason, which I think is good. I think it's good. Give him some rest. Let him recover. He's totally ready to go once Big 12 tournament time comes. And a whole bunch of what's on the line tonight as well is, of course, the 4 seed in the conference tournament, which leads to a double bye, which, of course, would be huge because then that just puts you one game away from playing in the semifinals against most likely Houston in that instance, I believe. So, yeah, and in my opinion, I think it's decently likely BYU wins one of the games against Iowa State, because either they win tonight, or if not, I think they win second round of the conference tournament against, I think the teams they would be playing for the right to play against them would probably be Oklahoma State and Cincinnati. I think that's the current projection, at least if the season were to end today. So either way, I think that we're going to see a rematch between these two teams. Whoever's the 4 and the 5, probably see a rematch there. So really excited to see this game. I'm diving in real quick for some deciding factors. For one thing, this Iowa State team plays some pretty decent defense. One of their bigger weaknesses, though, is the 3 ball. Ultimately, teams have done really well shooting it from outside. I'm going to take this one a slightly different direction than it might sound like I'm taking it. It might sound like I'm just saying shoot well from 3, but I'm going to say it's more than that. I think that a big way, though, you can set up those threes is getting out in fast break. And just overall, a good way to get your offense started against a good defensive team, especially at their place, is just fast break offense. So I think that's going to be really important tonight, is get out fast, score, go on runs. If you can just score fast against this team, I think you have a really good shot at being in it at the end. Well, in the meantime, on defense, I think it's going to be really important for BYU to go back to a strength that they had, especially earlier in the season, which is just rebounding. Winning the rebounding battle has a big difference. We saw what happened in the Arizona game. Ultimately, offensive rebounds were a big part of how the Wildcats stayed around in that one. So I think it's going to be very important for BYU to do a good job keeping the Cyclones off the offensive board. My bold prediction for tonight's game is I am predicting that BYU will have where am I going to go with this? I'm going to say BYU will have 5 players score double digits tonight. I think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout game. Ultimately, my pick in the end, though, is probably going to be Iowa State. This is a really good team. Lots of talent. Arguably one of the toughest places to play in the Big 12. So I think that BYU probably looks very competitive in this one. But ultimately, in the end, I think Cyclones come out on top by like 5 or 6 points. So yeah, that's the next BYU basketball games up. Now a review of all the other sports, what they did over the weekend. I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, but Friday night, BYU women's gymnastics got their first score over 196, and they beat that mark by quite a bit, going for 196.775. So really impressive, important performance by them. For those that don't do gymnastics very, very well, and that kind of includes me, I follow gymnastics, but I'm not super familiar with what a good score exactly is. But 196 was a mark this team was shooting for that would probably put them in the top 30, I think I heard, nationally. So getting well over that, really good news for this team. And then also BYU baseball finishes a sweep over Gonzaga. Softball won a couple more games. And track, BYU men's track took third, BYU women's track took second at the Big 12 championship, so great news there. The Big 12 is a very good track championship, so I feel like those are really impressive performances. And yeah, so exciting stuff. March is a great time for sports, and yeah, excited to see how everything goes. I'll be back later this week to review some of it. Let's go Cougs.